Tech Talks, House Rules. Join us on AVE Live, Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us on Zoom. Watch on Facebook or YouTube from the AV Educate page, or register as an attendee for the webinar. Live Q&A. Our guest will lead us through a guided demo and conversation about tonight's topic. We will take your questions and comments throughout the show. Don't wait until the end. Get your questions and comments in early to shape the conversation. We don't know it all. We're human and don't claim to know everything. We may demonstrate or discuss one way to do something, but that doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. If you found another way that is easier or yields better results, please share with the community so we can all learn together. Follow AV Educate. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and have a library of content on YouTube. Join us on Zoom for AV Tech Talks and to become a member of our community on Discord, where the conversations, the learning, and the sharing continues. We are where you are. Place your phone over the QR code to come learn more about AV Educate.
Hey, welcome back to AV Tech Talks. How's everybody doing? Hope everyone's doing well. It is Monday night, so we are here. Thank you for bearing with us. A couple minutes late, just working out some tech.
Oh, no, you can tell them I messed everything up. You can just tell them the truth. It's fine.
It's all good. So tonight, we're going to be talking about the state of the AV industry, AV and events, I guess. Omar's gathered some reports and some statistics that have come out recently, talking about where we are, where we've been. We're going to touch on some pay scales and some other stuff. So I'm sure this is something that all of us have some opinions and thoughts on, and we'd love to hear your opinions and thoughts. So if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or here in the Zoom webinar, give us some of your feedback and tell us you agree, tell us you disagree, or that we're totally wrong, or that all of these reports that we're going to reference are full of it and they have no idea. Let us know what you're seeing personally, because we would love to know what everyone is seeing as far as where events are going, if people are getting back to in person, if we think hybrid is moving forward, and all that. So with that, I guess, do we want to see, just before we get into the reports, does anyone on the panel have any thoughts of the state that we're in right now? What are we seeing? I know, Leo, you're actually on the other side of the Atlantic from us, so your market's completely different than what we're seeing. What are you seeing in the UK? Oh, I think you're double muted there. I lost him. Do you guys hear him? No. Yeah, we lost you, Leo. We'll come back to you. I'll let you work on that for a minute. Anybody else? Like Justin, I know you've been doing some gigs. What are you seeing, and what are your thoughts on where we're at compared to where we've been the last few months, maybe?
Yeah. I just got off. Just finished a hybrid the other night, 4 days. I've got some live stuff on the books. I've also still getting calls from clients who are looking for virtual, either live virtual or virtual prep work. So I'm still seeing a healthy balance of both. I think it's still going to be a balance of both for probably at least the remainder of the year. But I am starting to see more of the traditional stuff coming in. Not as much as I'd like, but enough, which is better than nothing, which is what I have had. So.
And you're in the Florida market, is that right?
Yeah, I'm in Central Florida, so I'm in Orlando area, which is usually very busy year round. I mean, most of the time I don't even have to travel to stay busy. I mean, I do, but yeah. And I know that a lot of my colleagues, just from looking on LinkedIn and social media, I'm seeing a lot of familiar properties around town with them being in those, my friends being in those venues as well. So it is definitely here anyway, starting to pick back up pretty heavy.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. How about you, David?
Well, I'm in corporate, so it's a little bit different. We are slowly returning to work, and a lot of the meetings, at least that we're doing, are hybrid, but more hybrid with SIP 323 systems and Zoom, which is a challenge in and of itself. But all in all, everybody seems to be adapting to it.
Good. Are you seeing some more? I mean, yeah, you're doing video conferencing, but are you seeing live events come back, or are they trying to do hybrid, or what's?
We've done some hybrid events for, like the upfront type events and certain things particular to the line of work I'm in. It's difficult to say how they're adapting to those. So, I mean, it's doing the best we can with the tools that we have at our disposal, I guess is the safest way to say things.
Got it. Great. Leo, did we get your audio back? No, I'm still not hearing you. Yep. How about you, John? Are you seeing anything? I know you're involved in a lot of organizations, so what are you seeing?
Oh, California is not only a state; it's a state of mind. We have things opening up. The state has officially opened up. They've returned to some requesting masks indoors, but we do have events happening at our convention center and in the academic community. The schools are getting ready for both face-to-face and some hybrid instruction. So it's a mixed bag out here in beautiful California.
Great. And then like for the aquarium and some of the other specialty types of venues that you do a little bit of work at, how is that working out as far as the events?
The aquarium has opened up, and we're getting ready to do a event for the California State Parks here in Monterey, and then we have another one planned at Lake Tahoe in September. But the demand for the virtual field trips was the highest it's ever been in the history of the California State Parks. They ran out of open slots before the end of the school year, and luckily the legislature was smart enough to actually put it in a line item in the budget. So during this next academic school year, we're going to have more park interpreters available for both electronic field trips, but they're also hoping to get face-to-face field trips with those schools that have the resources to get to parks. And there's also some grant funding. So I think we're going to see a real desire for the schools get back to what was the old normal, but I don't think we're going to get away from a lot of hybrid and remote learning that's going to take place in California, at least during this next year.
Got it. Cool. Well, good to know. Good insight there. And, hopefully we do start seeing everything kind of open up some more. But yeah, I think that you're right that hybrid model is going to be what we see for the next foreseeable future. Cool. How are we, Leo? Did we third time? No, we're still not hearing you. Oh no. Is your mic double mute? No. Okay. So we'll get back to Leo. Great. So Omar, do you want to kind of start leading the way on some of those, or do you want to talk about anything you're seeing in particular, or Chris?
No, I mean, I think we're good to go. If you guys are ready, you want to dive into it. We'll start off with a little bit of kind of what the norm was and how our industry kind of impacts the economy around us. We could talk a little bit about Justin, somehow like how he's busy year round and how that these events really impact the communities they end up being hosted at. Or we can keep, speculating stuff like that. I mean, this is all speculation, conversation starters, kind of seeing what you guys are seeing out there, what we're seeing out there statistic wise. Surveys have been taken by different institutions around the AV industry. So it's your guys' call. Do you want to dive a little bit into this and see where the conversation goes, or is there anything in particular you guys want to dive into before we even start?
Well, I was going to say maybe so some of the reports that we mentioned, where are you getting some of those sources so we know maybe that'll shape where we want to take it?
Yeah. So one of the ones we're going to look at, which is a 3-page paper, it's kind of an infographic. That one is from the Live Events Coalition, which was founded during the beginning of COVID, and they kind of are the if you want to say not just live events as in live events, but corporate. They kind of cover all the branches, which is what this first 3 reports really dive into. And they are a coalition of a bunch of organizations, and they represent us legally. And so a lot of things that got fought for within the government, within something that passed in legislation for freelancers or people who are non-W2 workers. A lot of the stuff that got passed was brought to the House with funding and a team by the Live Events Coalition. Another one is by LASSO, who is growing constantly, right? LASSO we'll go through that a little bit and see the labor scale, the pay scales, what they are as of 2020, 2021. Those numbers might be a little bit shocking to some people. It's not a full comprehensive report. Obviously, there's things missing in there, but we'll kind of review that, see what you guys think about that. It also does it by regions, which I thought was really interesting. And LASSO, if you guys know who that is, they're a huge labor company. They are technically an event management platform or program that has now shifted more into actually doing their own labor as well. So now companies can connect with LASSO to get labor pool, and companies who need to be organized can use LASSO for themselves to organize their labor and the people, and it makes it very convenient on the back end and on the back end for you on the planning side, and also on the billing side. It's a very user-friendly software, totally towards labor, obviously. And then another report we got was from EventMB. They have been kind of leading when it comes to a lot of these not leading, I would say not forefront, leading a lot of things when it comes to what's being done out in the industry right now and gathering information. They were, in my opinion, during COVID, very active in kind of communicating and reaching out and doing these surveys. And then another one we got was from Pathable, which is hit or miss on what your thoughts are with that, but it's just Pathable is another event platform. But they gathered, I want to say, the most people. They reached out to the most, about 900 different companies, and did a report, an industry report of what the state of the industry is as 2021 survey for event planners. So we're going to look at it from the planner side, from the company side, and a little bit from the freelancer side, kind of get a broad spectrum of what's going on. And those are kind of the places I went to look at this stuff. I also checked some other platforms like Event Safety Alliance. If you guys don't know what that is and you're in the AV industry, Event Safety Alliance is kind of the de facto OSHA for us. That's who you go to for that information. They didn't have anything related to what we were talking about tonight. They did release, if you guys weren't aware, they did release at the very beginning, and they've continued to push it. If you guys haven't looked at it, kind of the comeback guide for the AV industry and guidelines that you can follow right off the bat, kind of like a whole blueprint of what you should be doing and not doing for your events following this. And they've partnered with OSHA, a couple of different organizations as well that are up there that I can't think of right now, but they partnered with those organizations and made headway into like saying, these are what's expected, this is acceptable, this is what we should be doing, and kind of giving you a blueprint for your events coming out of what should and shouldn't be done essentially at your event to kind of keep you in line. And then it's a free, so you can go to their page, Event Safety Alliance. I forgot what the report is, but it's a free ebook. You can download it. It's not a long read. It's maybe like an hour read if you really dive into it. But that was really good if you guys are looking for a plan or don't have a plan. But yeah, their EAS is a short term for them. But if you look them up, they have the event safety guidelines. Event Safety Alliance has the guidelines for coming back and being full swing with your events, and making sure that you, without having to dive into all these other places, have kind of one centralized location information to dive in and say, hey, we're following this procedure from this person and this from this person, so we are up to regs and what needs to happen between the WHO and OSHA and a couple other organizations. So we're gonna kind of dive into all that. Nothing from Event Safety Alliance. I know I dove into that a little bit. A big fan of that organization though. So
cool. So let's I think the Lasso report kind of sounds, and I think a lot of us are interested in, you know, what's going on with how people are getting paid across the industry. You know, that's a big thing people like to talk about. So maybe we can dive into some of that, and then move into more of like the event trends that you were talking about too.
Yeah, let's do it. So let me go ahead and do a screen share with you guys. If you guys can't see anything, it's not the right size, I can zoom in, zoom out. I'll kind of be a little bit zoomed out so we can get an overall view of this. That way it's kind of easy to just read it yourself as well. So I will try not to just do death by PowerPoint essentially, or death by PDF. So these are all PDFs. This again is from Lasso, Event Industry Crew Pay Report. This is for 2020, 2021. So some of the things that are interesting in here is, like I said, it doesn't cover everything, right? But you got A1s, A2s, camera operators, LED tech, projectionists, V1s, V2s. You have lighting, LDs, L1s, L2s. Lighting is kind of interesting because, as we all know, during the pandemic, this wasn't used a lot because there wasn't a lot of live going on. There is no streaming operator. There's no Zoom ops. There's no virtual tech positions that it kind of goes into. But these numbers I thought were still good to show. And in general, carpenter, general V tech, master electrician, stagehand. Particularly when we're doing this, I kind of want you guys between V1, LDs, A1s, and general AV techs and stagehands. I kind of, if you have pen and paper, just write some of these down. Kind of want you to remember some of these numbers. What's really cool that Lasso's done about in the last 5 years is they've kind of regionalized their information. And again, if you guys want to see this, you can go to Lasso, go to the resources tab, and in the resources tab, you can kind of see what their different. And they have tons of stuff. They come up with that yearly report for this. It's a good starting point to kind of get an idea of where things are going in the industry. These are submitted by everybody who's a part of Lasso. They also do some outreach stuff to get it out there. But so we'll dive right into this. Right. So A1, these are medium national rates, and I'll show you these numbers first here. So quarter one of 2020 all the way to quarter one of 2021. So they kind of, and again, I'll explain some of these numbers here in a little bit. If you have any questions, go ahead and stop me and just ask these questions here. But these numbers are submitted by the users of Lasso. So this isn't just generic, they put this together, right? So you're looking at anywhere between average being what, $45 here, right? 45, 46 cents, $45, $38 in some areas. What's interesting about this is the way they divide this. So this is by region. And I'll leave that up here for a minute. The map below shows the median pay rates for A1s by region over the past year. Please note these rates are aggregated based on different event types and sizes. So they're taking the data, they're already generalizing it for us and showing these as results. But this is what's interesting to me. So us for here in Florida, we're seeing about, we'd be in this region down here, which is 35. I'm not an A1. I'm pretty sure A1s can make more than that. New York, 35, higher up, you got $50. So California at 45. And this is what they're saying is, again, aggregated, but they're collecting information. These are the averages in these areas, and they're doing it by region. All right, so an A1 position, you're looking at 35. I mean, right there is anybody seeing any information that they see that they think is inaccurate? They're seeing different numbers out there for what they're doing. Do we see any comments already going off on Facebook or YouTube about this rate right here, just for an A1 position, right? Which is still crucial in what we did in virtual when it comes to managing all the mixed minuses and stuff like that, which, if anything, audio is probably as important, if not more, than video in some cases because of how we do things. And again, I'll leave that there for a second.
I'm going to echo what Mac in our in here in Zoom was saying, as far as sorry about that. Let me do this. As far as that seeming way low, and now understanding though that if this is taken over the last year, there probably weren't a lot, a large pool of A1s actually working, and maybe some of them were staff positions or lower end kind of shows, although it doesn't change from quarter one 2020. So, there wasn't, come quarter two, I mean, almost all my A1 work was gone. for the most part, and I moved to
Right.
virtual, which you see like a small dip there. And I wonder if just a lot of it might be because of staff positions were doing the jobs of A1s for any of the companies that were still around. But that number for New York, can you go back to the regions there, Omar?
Of course.
Yeah, for that like Northeast region that includes New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, for that to say 35, and then for like Maine and New England to be like 50, that just seems like kind of backwards from my experience. But
And I thought California would also be still pretty high. I know they had a shutdown and stuff, but I know the cost of living's higher up there. They had the 8-hour versus 10 hours. AB5 is involved in the mix there, so like you figure that would be a higher rate than 45. But again, Lasso's aggregating some of these numbers, so they're not 100% of what they are. You're seeing kind of the average in these regions. But remember, we're looking at this as techs, but the people that are in charge of labor and they're using this are looking at this as their reference point. So you're looking at this might be what your base pay is, and then include, let's say 30% is the average of what I read somewhere else, saying 30% is the average markup or marginal rate. So that plus that 30%, now you're looking at a rate that you're used to billing to your clients directly. You're looking at that being what the rate is now, plus now they're trying to make their margins, so they're dropping you down to these lower rates. So again, this is just a spark of conversation to see what you guys are seeing out there in the industry and what you have going on, because again, this is just for A1s here, and we'll see some of the other positions, but it doesn't cover all the streaming positions. It doesn't cover Zoom stuff, but this is a generalization of what we are seeing. And I feel that some of this is because of COVID. People were offering, COVID rates to get work. Now coming out of that, we might still see some of that stagnant kind of mentality. Also, there's an influx of new event planners, so something else to consider, that don't know rates, and now they're using some of this stuff as references, or they're seeing, well, during COVID, we did it for this much, why is it costing me more? And they're not understanding this, hey, it used to cost us this, right? And that old way of doing things is going to take us time to get back to it. But if there's no more questions we can keep going down this pay rate.
No, just a couple more comments here in Zoom. From Michael Fraley says, these are corporate rates, not concert rates, by the way, which in the work I do, the corporate rates have been usually higher than the concert rates, and that's why I do more corporate work.
Agreed.
So I would actually expect these to, I would hope that these were higher. If these were concert rates, I would still think they were a little low, but more understandable, because obviously there weren't many concerts in the last year. Michael Fraley is also saying supply and demand, and in live it's day rates, not hourly. But yeah, this report I think just takes the hourly kind of rate of whether you're doing day rates or some other pay method. But yeah, very interesting. And Mac Carr saying virtual still has real A1s, and Mac is one of those real A1s doing a ton of real heavy virtual stuff. And it's great that Mac has been so busy. I know a lot of us, though, have not been as busy and maybe pivoted to different things. But yes, there are definitely real A1s still working, especially in broadcast and heavy duty virtual.
100% no, and a lot of studios that I worked in, we did the Dante route, to do our mix minus for our Zoom callers. If we did the NDI, we still had someone else controlling that. It's still definitely a real position. I 100% agree with that. The corporate side, rates are a little bit more. I totally agree with that. Touring side has been the same. I haven't seen much of a difference in touring rates. I got a call for a tour that came up, and someone else got it because of a rate thing. But there haven't seen too much difference in that. I think installations have shifted a little bit. It's a little. I don't want to say less money, but now it's a little bit more on the billing hourly side, more than the 5 and 10s and stuff that it used to be. It's a little more structured, not structured. Structured is the right word, but it's a little more like stricted and maintained now. Like, hey, like you clocked in at this time, clocked out at this time. Even when you get into those halves and stuff like that, like 8, let's hear from 8 till 10:30, like that 30, that becomes a difference. And a lot of things are getting played on a lot more heavily and relied on a lot more when it comes to the installation side. So I've seen all three sides of this. I dabble in all three of it, but my main bread and butter is obviously is corporate events, and Lasso's a big player in that world. Yeah. Leo, you got something?
Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes.
Hey, restart of the new version of Zoom. I wonder, we had a complete shutdown of the West End. So we had all the guys that were working in the West End were sitting there kicking their heels. And I wonder if that's why New York is deflated for a similar reason, that there's a lot of people that were busy. All the guys on tour, I mean, I was out on an event last week, a week before, and all the guys who were touring had literally been doing nothing for 12 months, especially also all the guys who were on the ships. So they were all sitting around as well. So I just wonder if it's that, that's one of the reasons, is we've just not seen, or there's been a glut of people available. But maybe this is good news, because I think, as you were saying, Omar, that things are starting to pick up. And also I think people are realizing a lot more that they need better, especially audio, in what they're doing on their hybrid events, and that for A1s there's going to be a lot of business coming up.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there's two things that I noticed from the pandemic starting till now, right? A lot of the audio engineers that were there, and I'm sure Ed can better justify this, but I've seen both ends of this. I've seen very, very, very talented audio engineers who I had a lot of respect for industry struggle with the virtual way of doing things, right? But once they kind of grasped it, it was like, okay, I need to prep all these things ahead of time. And then there's been another side where I've seen a lot of the video guys who are getting thrown that A1 position stuff, like, hey, can you manage all this as well as this? They're kind of like, how do I get this to pass through it? But I'm not so concerned about the quality of the audio as long as it's going through. I'm not concerned about levels. I'm not concerned about a lot of things that audio engineers think about on a daily, right? Like, I want everybody to sound the same. I want it to be uniform. I want the music to come in. We're kind of just like, for me, especially for the first probably 6 months, it was just like, as long as it's passing through, I'm good, right? After feedback, then I got better at it. But that's two things that I see happening with a lot of these guys out there. And I think that's what I'm saying. Audio is as important for video, if not more, because if we lose the audio on this, and we've seen it on our own show, the audience drops, right? Because I don't want to. Go ahead.
We've seen exactly that, and we were having this discussion earlier today on another show, that the production levels that are acceptable, and some of the stuff people are saying on the Olympics at the moment, that when they're calling back to the families, they're allowing a level of quality that you just wouldn't allow a few years ago. And they're just saying, oh, well, yeah, but it's just another Zoom call. We don't really care.
Even to that point, on the Olympic channel that they put out, me and my wife were watching it before we got on today. We had it on running in the background. And whoever's mixing it, you can't hear the announcer. You can't hear the announcer over any of the action that's going on. So it's like you're saying, Leo, and like we're saying, the level of quality that they're allowing to come through is definitely went down.
Brody, if only we knew some A1s that are out in
I know.
In there. Do we know anybody?
I think Ed needs to give somebody a call out there. I mean, I know it's probably 6 o'clock in the morning there right now, 7 o'clock in the morning there. So I mean, but yeah, that's what we were sitting here saying. She's like, my wife goes, you can't even hear that, and I'm like, yeah, whoever's mixing it isn't mixing it right, and they just don't care, or they're not.
But it's not even that.
Through that.
That is sort of that's that side, and the OBS are having a lot of issues. I think it's just because they're pulling the teams together, and it's been different to how they would normally do it. So OBS is Olympic Broadcasting, but I think the guys that are doing the stuff that's coming inside the countries, that where they're doing callbacks to the families, we seem to be allowing a level of production that you just wouldn't have allowed 5 years ago, of just calling people in, but my point is that level is not going to be acceptable for much longer. I think it's going to shift up,
right? And some of that, it's two factors, right? Some of it is there's new audio engineers that are coming in the industry that don't really know about this until they hear about it. And then there's seasoned guys that are doing this, that are getting put in a position where it's like, I don't have control of that feed to me. I only have so much control. So it's the best I can get with that feed. So there's another level of I guess we've lost some control in virtual big time, right? I mean, if you guys watched any of the news in the last 12 months, you were having people calling from their homes, and a lot of the shows we're doing from their homes and their bedrooms and kitchens and things like that. Some of those things you have no control over, and it's like, but I have a deadline to meet. I still got to go on air. So just like audio and video, there's some things that are not in everybody's control, and I think that's part of the, hey, it is what it is because I can't control that end of it.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But I think one of the key things also that's the change is that anybody that was a analog audio engineer is going to have a lot of problems because it's got to be digital now to do this stuff. Because
Right.
even the simplest thing is that to make the mix work, you've got to be able to put in delays, and that's a fundamental requirement which throws you out if you're an analog person. So that's going to mean, as Chuck was actually saying on Facebook, it's all about retraining and people have got to adapt to the new way of doing things.
Yep, and to what you guys are saying here, that's the hard part, right? Is that it's not only just that it's a learning curve, but it's a learning curve and it's happening now instantly, and we're trying to adapt as quickly as possible. And some of it is like the technology just isn't there for it, or the best way to do it isn't the option because XYZ company that we're working for doesn't have it that way.
Exactly. So do you think some people are taking jobs at a lower rate just to get their skills up so that they can deliver in the new rock world?
Yes, 100%.
I think one of the things Chuck touched on in the Facebook side, he mentioned that, virtual Zoom techs are the new hotness, especially V1s who are also Z1s. And some of us are Z1s and 2s and V1s and 2s all at the same time. So I think what happened is, a lot of us are wearing many hats, and some of those hats are new hats to us. So, a lot of video people pivoted very quickly to vMix, and vMix has a lot of audio, embedded into it with the mix buses and everything. And that's not necessarily a video person's strong suit. So they got thrown into the fire, and vMix is not at all what I would consider kind of standard audio performance and what we would typically be using as a tool if I was just being the audio person on a show. So it's also, not the standard way of doing it. It's a little convoluted at times. It works differently, and this is how some video people have learned, to do audio. They've just kind of figured it out, and that's not their wheelhouse. So we're getting kind of messier audio than we would because that's just not their expertise. And everyone's kind of now spread much thinner, doing a lot more jobs. So something's obviously going to give if you're doing all of these things. It's like the same reason why when we were pre-pandemic, we were having backups for everything. And, we wanted separate, discrete hardware doing, single tasks. And then in the pandemic, we've thrown every egg in the same vMix basket, essentially, if we're using vMix or whatever your Vision Mixer is. And now it's kind of, we're seeing that, obviously some things are going to suffer if you have everything laying on one person's shoulders. So I think that's some of it. Although I guess Chuck is saying no, not at all. So I don't know. Maybe I'm 100% wrong.
I think I was like, Chuck said something. I'm thinking, is he having a go at me or you, Ed? But he's put Ed at the end, so I'm going to take. I'm passing it to you.
He did, yeah. So it's all. I'm totally wrong. That's fine. Which is why we have these discussions to see what we're talking about. But I was to the point of the Olympics we were talking about. They're taking return calls. I've seen a bunch of the parent reactions, the family reactions from home, and some of those are like completely terrible to. I think it was Leo's point, and that, that's not going to be an acceptable thing, but that's the technology that we have. The parents of Olympians aren't production people. So whatever they're going to send, whatever their home internet situation is going to be, is what we're getting on some of these broadcasts. And it is kind of crazy that some of us who have been doing these Zoom calls for so long are putting out better products than we're seeing on, the Olympic broadcast. And to that point, though, a lot of those people are not, tech people, and it's not to be expected that they would have high quality stuff. But
with the NFL, they could have gone the route of the NFL, and I know it's a much grander stage to do it the way with the Olympics than with the NFL. But with the NFL, they asked the players, "Are you coming to the draft selection, or are you staying home?" And for the ones that said they were staying home, who were draft prospected in a certain round, they would actually send video and audio guys to their houses to set equipment up. And it might not, and I get it, there's a way larger scale when you're talking about the Olympics and you're talking about the world and things like that. And I'm sure it's a lot harder predicting who's going to win gold, who's going to win bronze, who's going to win silver, and all these things. But there could have been something more they could have done than just, hey, family, set up a webcam and a microphone and let's see if we can get this to work. You know, there could have been a little bit more like, hey, your daughter's prospected to make gold, silver, or bronze here in the Olympics. Let's send you an audio video package and see if we can find somebody local to help. Or if not, we can at least get on the phone with you and kind of walk you through it. I don't know. That's just my opinion on that.
But I think that's my point is that this is the opportunity. That's what I'm saying is that if something looks poor and it sounds poor, then that's when the opportunity arrives. You know, that's where I think it's going to be. In a way, you know, I don't want it to be bad, but actually, if people are doing it bad, it actually then opens up the opportunity for people and these new Z1s, as you just called them. I've not heard that saying before. That would be great, you know.
I mean, there was an instance local for me, woman in Naples here where I live won the Businesswoman of the Year award. The company reached out, had me go to the house. They shipped her a laptop, a lapel USB mic, a light, and a webcam, and had me go to this lady's house and set everything up for her, do an audio and a video check for her, and sit there for 2 hours while she did the event and make sure everything stayed good. And then I packed it all up, put it back in the box, slapped the label on it for pickup, and then I left.
I think part of the thing too is just the concept of being proactive or reactive. And early on in the pandemic, it was just reactive. You were reacting to a problem that was put out there. And over the past year, we've all had the time to be more proactive and put together those kits and have a clearer strategy for things. And that's what's that quantum change in what's being delivered on this platform versus some others.
Yeah. One other thing we kind of talked about was, you know, availability and somebody mentioned supply and demand earlier. And I'll tell you, I'm actually going to be going out of state and doing, you know, a job where I'm going to be on site for 10 days at a pretty big event. And the reason I'm being
jealous.
brought in, the reason I'm being brought in from New York is that they couldn't get enough local crew. And it went out as like, hey, does anybody know anybody? And I happen to know someone who knew someone that could bring me out on this job. And as far as what we're seeing in the reports, though, that pay scale is actually, you know, I'm not seeing a decrease in the pay scale. If anything, it's at least on par. And for some of the people on that crew, it's actually going to be a boost in pay scale. Because they're right now, I mean, again, with the Olympics, this is a very high-end event. So a lot of the people who would have worked on this event are working on the Olympics. But then there's also a lot of people who have left the industry. And there's also a ton of tours that are all of a sudden ramping up and starting up and grabbing all that top-level talent that normally would have already been booked for this time, you know, 6-8 months out. And all of a sudden had the openness of their schedules, and now they're able to jump on all these other things. And everyone, well, I'm seeing a lot of companies that are having shortages of labor as opposed to not enough labor. So hopefully what we start seeing is that we don't have to take those jobs at lower pay because we don't have to, I guess, lower our pay because the companies who we're working for and the event producers really can't find enough techs to do these events. So that's what I'm seeing, at least. And this just happens to be one case where I'm leaving on Friday for this event. I'm going to be, and it's a, like I said, a 10-day job, and it's because they couldn't get enough local crew. They were only able to get 2 out of the 6 on the audio team, this specific audio team for this event that they needed to fill. So that's what I'm seeing. And I hope that everyone isn't just trying to grab whatever they can get and maybe doing, I don't want to see a race to the bottom. That's what I always worry about with these kinds of times is, that people are undervaluing their skills and their labor. and just grabbing what they can because they feel like they need to get some jobs. So I think that there's a lot more jobs coming and not enough of us to fill them. Leo, did you have something to say?
I was going to say, though, while I agree with you, and I think there is always that, I think when you start again and you basically feel like you're putting your trainer wheels back on again, even if it is for the first job, there is that feeling like, they use the imposter syndrome sort of feeling that, you're like, especially when you're talking about a hybrid event or you're talking about a new, so there's something new in there that you've not done before, you've not done it in anger, and you're going to be sitting there pushing stuff out in a different way than you have. And we did a job, and it was like, we were, in the back of your mind, it's like, are we good enough? Can we do this? Have we done this? This is slightly different. This is outside what we do. And then you sit there and you go, hold on a minute. The gaffer tape's the same gaffer tape. Everything's the same. We're back in the room. We've been standing up for this long. The only thing that we needed to do is probably buy a new pair of trousers because we didn't fit the ones we were wearing 18 months ago.
Exactly.
So, to go on to your point about you're saying people moving on in the industry, me and Justin just did a show call in Orlando where they had, I want to say, somewhere around 50 stagehands come up to do a setup for a dance competition. I want to say, 30 of the people there weren't even from Florida. Some of them came over from Louisiana. Some of them came from Georgia. Some came from North Carolina. Like, not everybody was here. The one guy that was working with me setting up the lobby, he flew in from California just to find work. So, I know, shout out to Robert Schumacher. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Scrappy was there. Scrappy was there. Justin was there. I was there. Who else was there that we know, Justin? I think that's pretty much everybody that, in the community that was there, right?
I saw a few guys that I used to work with a lot, pre-crash.
Yeah.
They had found their way in there. So, yeah, it was a pretty big crew.
Yeah, I mean, I know Friday for sure they had over 35 different people Friday, just in the morning crew alone, and then there was 30 people for the night crew. So you're talking 60 different people right there. And half the crew I worked with on the Wednesday night, the load-in, me and 3 other people were Floridian. The rest of them were from Louisiana, Tennessee, Georgia. Not like, oh, I'm from there and I'm here now. No. They came here. They're staying with family that lives here, or they're renting a hotel just to even do stagehand work. They can't find, labor company, and that was through a labor company. So this takes me to a point, if you guys want to dive down the rabbit hole a little bit further, when it comes to the A2 position, some of those rates. I'm going to show those real quick. This is the part where I was talking to Ed before the show, and I was kind of saying, some of the things that I'm seeing are a little bit nerve-wracking. So we saw, sorry, my mouse is gone. We saw, right, A1s. This is about what Lasso's saying is out there, right? So then A2s, I remember in an A2 position, these are really who the presenters had to deal with, right? These are some of the rates for an A2. Not huge difference from an A1 position. And not that I remember there being too many A2s, but so here's a regional, which I think everybody likes to see. And again, like Ed was saying earlier, in the areas where you would think this wouldn't be a thing, the numbers are a bit lower here. California's lower again. Florida's at 39 rate. The Texas region over here, Central, is 39. So this is for an A2 position. I'm curious to see, why is it 43 up here is the aggregated average. But an A2, I think, and again, this is probably what Ed was saying, right? The demand for this was lower, so these numbers are definitely more skewed out because of that reason. There wasn't A2s working as much, so they were maybe making more deals to get work. But yeah, and then if we go, so that's A1s and A2s, and then it goes to a different category. So the video world, camera operators, these were kind of everywhere, right? Camera operators became a definitely necessity. And I guess what's interesting about some of these rates is like what really qualified as a camera in some places, right? Because a webcam, a 4K webcam, is accurate for a lot of these Zoom things we do. I know a lot of our viewers and presenters have way better cameras than just a webcam, but yeah. So cameras, here's national rates. And again, I'll keep going on this.
LED technicians. So this one, 45 is the average in my region, right? I used to charge way more than that. 45 to 40. So I mean, national looks like it's pretty much the same, but LEDs are definitely going on the rise. They're becoming more affordable. They're being used more for disguise. They're AR, XR. A lot more installations when it comes to venues. A lot more installations in general are being taken for LED stuff.
Do you think because the cost of LEDs are going down, that's why the margin of the rate is going down?
I think the reason LEDs are selling more is because yes, the cost is going down. The bulk buying is better purchasing power. I think because of everything that went down during COVID, more companies partnered up. I know a lot of companies have partnered up and definitely bought together. So they bought, So
there's more companies having more LED walls, so therefore you're not having to. So when it comes to supply demand, you have 10 people doing something only 3 people were doing before now. So you could charge $700 a day for LED wall, whereas now you can't because you got 7 other companies now doing it.
Correct. That, and then a lot of the bigger companies that just did LED and that was it. They were dying during COVID, right? Because there was nothing at the start of it, unless you had an installation. So a lot of companies sold their gear off to other companies who were able to take gear. So then that entry price is much lower because you're buying it used from somebody else. Some companies let go of LED walls because they weren't using it at all. So they let go of it for cheap prices. I mean, you could have bought a whole, not that I looked it up, but you could have bought a whole writing leg off of eBay for like 10 grand. You could have bought a whole lighting department, 10, 15 grand.
Definitely looked it up. Don't let them fool you.
people were like selling just every, whatever they could to stay afloat. So I get it. But I mean, LEDs are becoming used more and more now. So the availability is out there more. They're easier to use. There's definitely more manufacturers. They're becoming cheaper. And you look at companies like PRG. I mean, even smaller companies. A couple companies down in South Florida and in Orlando, they partnered up and they bought 1,000 tiles, 3,000 tiles, 5,000 tiles. That rate goes way down because it's bulking. And now they've created their own kind of internal network to rent from each other. So they get a bunch of apps, and Apps has got like one person down here, but like 5 companies bought it. They bought 1,000 each. That rate goes from $50 a tile to like $15 a tile, and now it's become much more cost effective for them. They all got their share of it, and now within 100-mile radius of each other, they have all these different options internally, avoiding rental costs, right? To now get it between their companies and partners that they've bought it with, to now rent from each other when they need more or less. So it's a win-win situation for all of them. They just have to agree on the initial who's buying it first and yada yada yada.
Right,
Leo, you had something?
Sorry.
I was going to ask Omar, but I can see that the rental price goes down, but how does that affect the job rate? And also, from your perspective, have the panels got simpler to operate and to manage? Is that what's causing the labor rate to drop as well?
So I don't know about the simpler to manage. So they have switched a little bit. The software's become much easier. If you went the Brompton route, I mean, Brompton pretty much is plug and play. You plug it in, it's going to auto detect panel 1, row 1. It'll tell you all the information, the feedback information. And there's only 3 flavors, right? There's Brompton, there's Nova, and there's eVision, right? Nova Star and eVision. Those are kind of your 3 main ones. They all essentially do the same thing when it comes to programming it. So once you learn one, Nova Star and eVision are very similar, or actually Nova Star Smart or Nova Smart and eVision are very, very similar. There's a little bit of difference in the math that gets done. It's literally like a pixel difference in math between where your butts line up. You got to remember. Brompton kind of tells it for you. You plug it in, you tell it what you're doing this order, and it reads back all the information for you. So much less of more of a learning curve for the programming, but less knowledge needed to get it up and running, essentially, right? It's just at that point mapping out your stuff and knowing that, let's say Nova Star, for example, a Nova processor is one port. You can do about 25 panels per port. So one port, 25 panels, and then port 2 is the next, 26 to whatever. And then it's really figuring out that thing. There's been a lot more of discussion. I don't know about training, but I know there's been a lot more discussions about ways to wire things. Like my preferred way to wire an LED wall is left to right for signal and power up to down. It's a very quick visual for me to see what goes wrong. If I lose power up and down, if I lose tiles go black, right, from the front view, if it's up and down, it's power. If it's left to right, it's data. So it's a very quick way for me to do that. But also the technology has gotten a little easier at detecting those things, and it'll tell you if a cable is wrong. So it's a Cat6 cable, right, that just connects them. That's pretty much the same universally. The only upgrade I've seen to that is the XLR ends. So, or not ends, it's an XLR kind of a barrel that kind of protects it so it pins in there and you can unclip it. The only other modification I've seen is power cons are being used more for LED walls. So instead of the older way to do it, power cons are there. There was a couple brands that came out for a while that interconnected and did power connections. The problem was that the connecting points, the pins would rust for after a while, and you had to replace the whole thing. More LED walls, instead of being the whole panels to get taken out, the modules are coming out, so it's a little bit faster now. So now you send out an LED wall and you send out a kit that allows you to switch out panels. So instead of having to put one whole row in, Ethercon, I'm sorry, that's the correct word, Ethercon. Instead of having to do one whole row in and then powering it up and seeing everything, make sure the pixels are good to change out a panel, now you can put one row in, turn it on, check it as the second row is being built, right? If you're doing ground stack, essentially. And you can now just pop out that section and put a new one in. And again, there's still some limits to that because of weight and stuff like that. Like you don't want to go 4 to 5 high and then try to take out a panel at the bottom because you're still going to get a lot of pressure. So it's definitely become a little more.
How's this affecting the labor rate? That's what we're trying to get to.
Yeah, sorry. So when you transition out to the labor side, a lot of the companies, what they're doing is they're sending out one person who essentially knows how to run the programming. Building it isn't the hard part, right? So now this one guy that's doing essentially the work is either doing it ahead of time, so he just shows up, loads up that file again, and says, hey, build it like this, put your wires this way, plug in here, plug in here. It becomes very plug and play for a lot of these guys. So you get a stagehand and just say, hey, you're going to build it this way. The hardest part to me is taking the patience on that first row, right? Which usually someone's there to help you. So like some of the tours that I've done, there's one guy that has a file, teaches like 3 to 5 guys, hey, make sure this row is perfect here, and then work your way up, or vice versa. If you're doing whatever the first row is, right, that one's got to be perfectly aligned. And in the second row, you just line it up. After that, it's pretty much, it pops right in. So it's much easier to do. I think they become more robust in the way that we built them, so that now it's become more people know about it. So it's just easier to get them done. There's not really, I don't see a lot of lead. When LEDs first came out, I was doing a lot of LED stuff. Now, when I get called for LED stuff, I'm doing very little. I'm usually uploading a programming and making sure that whatever I was given is done correctly for the leads, or I'm managing a crew to build them right so that there's no holes or gaps or anything like that. Which honestly, once you train about 5 guys on one wall, you just separate that team. Let's say you do 5 or 10 people, separate that team to do the other 2 walls, and you get done pretty quickly, right? So I think that's kind of been doing it. I think what's been keeping the prices at a steady keel during COVID is that LED is becoming more available and used more and more and more. And we're seeing it more as a staple because now the prices for an LED wall compared to the price of, like, let's say 2 screens, a double stack, like it becomes a brightness battle, right? I can get a double stack 10K projector or 2 double stack 20Ks with a screen on there and maybe do a widescreen. And that's what I've been bread and butter for years. But for about the same cost now, and maybe the same, and almost the same amount of time if I get the labor involved, I can do the same thing and get, I don't know, 100,000 nits off of the LED wall very easily, right? Most LED walls are running at 10%, 20%, maybe even, I don't think more than 20%. Most of them don't even run at full power. They're so bright, and then there's a cost savings too when you do it right. So if you do an LED wall, I don't have to worry about backlighting anymore because LED wall is going to provide tons of backlighting. My main focus is the cameras at that point, right? And can I get a small enough pixel count, right, to know, or small enough pixels, so 3.9 mil, right, is too wide. But if I get like a 0.8 mil, right, or 1.2, it's kind of like the borderline. My cameras will get Moray, right, 0.8, not so much. But now the technology has also been brought up. So now Sony, Panasonic have built-in software now that you can turn on the CCPs and RCPs. You can turn them on to kind of mitigate some of that moray from LEDs. So they're easier to build. They save you money on setup stuff, and it takes a crew. I mean, honestly, you get a dedicated one person in-house to be the main guy. You just put 5 hands together, and you can build a wall in about 5-6 hours.
And you need them for in-person, and we haven't had in-persons. So there has just been a fraction of the number of in-person events over the last year then. So,
but they've expanded.
I assume the LED, why? Because you're putting LEDs everywhere now that you
Correct.
weren't putting them before.
Right now, they're being used for, you think about New York, think about Times Square. They're everywhere in Times Square. Think about Japan's gone crazy with doing LEDs on the sides of buildings for advertisements. Not only that, but to make these very surreal visual effects. Right? You look at the Mandalorian that just came out. Mandalorian revolutionized the way movie industry is doing stuff, and then a bunch of reports came out, a bunch of other industries that did the same thing. And now there's XR studios that are being built all over the U.S., all over Japan, and some places in Australia. I don't know too much about the European market, but I'm assuming you guys have XR studios being built out there. The movie industry is seeing dramatic cost savings, right? For not only for themselves, because they can build all these sets in real time, but they can modify them, they can render them. The actors get to be in the environment, not this screen hocus pocus stuff anymore. So that's being used more and more and more. They have full control of the room. Lights are being taken out now because now you can control the lighting, the actual lighting, not even just the color, but the actual lighting intensity, right? The camera's got, now with the dual rendering going on. Now when the camera moves,
Can anybody tell what his passion is?
Yeah.
So it's
Omar. The question I have for you is,
Sure.
why did the screens fall to Hard Rock Stadium in Florida?
My assumption would be that someone didn't properly weigh them. It wasn't a wind factor because at the Hard Rock Stadium, it's an enclosed structure. They had, from what I could see in the picture, I wasn't there. I do know where it was at the Hard Rock Stadium. I do know the show still went on. But if you look at the picture, there's an LED wall built on there with the Touring truss. So these are heavy duty truss. I didn't see any supports. So again, speculation. I did see though, which again adds weight, right? I did see that there was a points on either side for line arrays, which adds weight to the front of this system. The truss rigging was done down the center of the pipes, but the centerpiece was definitely the wider truss, so the heavier truss. But then the sides that it went up on, they were the standards. So you have two different weight variables going there. So I just think it was a weight factor, and a little bit of wind just got, enough wind just pushed it forward enough. Must have been swaying, maybe it wasn't done being built, and it tipped over. Again, speculation. I don't know because I wasn't involved in that show, but it's definitely like it was a little bit of a weight issue, or definitely a weight issue. And
There's pictures like that just hurt when you see them.
Yeah, the problem, and it's my people, right? I'm Latin, right? Down here, it's a race to the bottom a lot of times, and one of the things that gets kind of thrown out essentially is a structural engineer involved to really make sure that everything's going on correctly. And sometimes it's hey, speed this, speed that. Yeah, we got approved for this, but we're going to use this engine because we have it in stock or we have it in inventory. So I think somebody just didn't calculate properly, or didn't do their weights right, or stuff got added that wasn't originally approved of because of necessity. And I don't want to bash anybody because who knows, I could have been there and it could have been my fault, but I definitely think just from looking at it, it was a weight issue right off the bat, and I think there wasn't enough support holding it up from the sway. Because the thing about LED walls, right, other than making an electric field for RF, you're also making this huge sail. It doesn't matter how heavy it is, the wind's still going to push that thing around, and once it starts rocking with enough wind, it's just going to keep rocking it back and forth until something gives. And usually what gives is going to be the truss, because LED walls, it's titanium bolts. They're tiny, but they're all linked together. It's the truss that always gives. And the truss was definitely bent and twisted out of shape. So it definitely gave. Sorry. Do you want to go on to out of the pay rate stuff? LED stuff.
Let's move on past the LED stuff here. I think we found Omar's true passion in life, where he should have just excelled through.
All right, sorry. So LED walls stayed about the same. I think this just blew up everywhere. I think this is gonna kind of be a whatever trend. It's just LEDs in every industry now. Now it's in broadcast, it's in installations, it's going in buildings, it's going everywhere. It's not just a gimmick anymore. Now it's kind of becoming the go-to standard.
Yeah, which is great. The downside of it is LED has got a really long life. So you put in an LED wall, and you're putting it in for a lot longer installation time than so most of the football stadia in the UK have all gone to LED walls.
Yep.
They've got LED perimeters. That stuff's in for a long time. So the installation is a one-off. Maintenance obviously is key, but I don't know how it's going to mean for the labor rates if you're not going to be doing as many installs. Or maybe you are. Maybe you just be installing more and more.
So for corporate events, I think installs. So here's my mindset on that. When it comes to the installation industry, right? LED walls have a super long shelf life when they're installed because they don't move around, right? But what we do, and there's constantly different hands, right? And I'll say hands to stage hands, however you want to slice it. They're going to be moving your stuff in and out. And yes, they've gotten a little more easy to build, but that doesn't mean the guy touching it is going to be competent in that, right? He's going to still maybe mess something up, move something around. So those LED tiles, their life expectancy drops dramatically in the live event sector. On the touring sector, drops dramatically. Even though they're going in and out of trucks, they tour with a whole bus full of them, just have extras, so that when this tile does go bad, instead of trying to fix it on the road, which there's no time for that, they're just replacing it, right? Installation side, especially in the sports arenas, those are getting switched out regardless. Some of the ones, like the Jumbotron ones that are being swapped out, not so much, but the perimeter ones, they're constantly needing maintenance. So for the installation industry, that's a fee right there. There's a maintenance fee that gets put to them. That puts them to work. And usually there's only one person in each company that really manages that, and there's a handful of freelancers. I think what's the turning point for LED is that installing it, right, is like a necessity. Once it gets installed, that repairing side, that's very niche still. There's not a lot of companies that repair LEDs. The people that can or that do some of it do it without permission sometimes. Those LEDs are super, super, super tiny. You can't just go to a Home Depot or Best Buy or Radio Shack well, it doesn't exist anymore, but you can't go to your typical place and get those smaller welders to like weld the LEDs back in place, because sometimes they just fall off and you put them back in. You gotta get special tools for that, and they cost money. And you gotta get special tools sometimes for the inerts to make this all work together. There's a niche for that coming, and I think that's gonna be more and more and more. And the problem also with LEDs is that there's so many flavors of LED that there's this universal kind of consistency with how they get built and how they get put together and wired up. But the nitty gritty of how they operate and function is kind of a wide spectrum array of different ways to do things. And I think that's where there's going to be some real money to be made, is on the repair side of them. They're very, very hard to maintain if you don't have the proprietary tools for that particular unit. And even then, some of those things, unless you got certified from the manufacturer, will award your warranty for your entire line, not just that one panel. So it's a tricky situation to be in. But they are becoming used more and more widely used. There's also outdoor versions, indoor versions, ones with panels you can dance on top of them. They're just
Ed,
inventing more and more ways.
Here? I think Omar needs to do an LED wall panel class, right?
We've done that. We did them live.
I think he just did.
No. I think he needs to do one. Like
we did one live pre-COVID. We had a paid class and we built the whole wall, programmed it, did a whole thing on it.
I think to some of what Leo was asking though, like, so for live events, we're building them and tearing them down
right
for the event. They're not getting installed the way we're using them in staging and rental, at least here in the States. So there's a lot of wear and tear, but there are people who need to be able to put them up and tear them down. And as Omar said, nowadays a lot of stagehands know how to put up an LED wall, and once you kind of put one up, you kind of know how to put them all up. The big thing is, again, if you're ground supporting, getting your first row right has to be level. Everything has to be flush, because that's going to set the tone for the rest of the wall going up above it. And then same thing if you're hanging, you want to make sure that everything is nice and level, and that your motors go up at the same time once you're starting building, because you're building one row at a time. But it is getting easier to find people who can build an LED wall. The programming is still somewhat specialized, and that's why, maybe some of the labor is going down. I think too, a lot of this, and Mac made a great point here in Zoom. He said something, this may be why he hasn't seen a lot of lasso labor on shows. And Mac, I can say definitely in the New York market, especially because I know that's where he's located as well. We don't see a lot of the lassos, or the one that I know just rebranded themselves, that used to be around, the video tech services. In the New York market, we don't get a lot of those kinds of vendors in for crewing, because there's so many techs here that every company has a roster super deep, or pre-pandemic had a roster super deep, and those kind of labor companies didn't really have a place, because no one was going to bring in somebody who they didn't know from a crewing company, because they had so many other people they could call. And I think that some of this, these numbers too, you got to keep in mind that nobody was calling labor companies over the last year. So any of the jobs that they may have sent their people out, those were maybe, it makes kind of sense that that's the rates they were reporting that they were working for. You know, you got to look at the sample pool that these reports are built on. And, I can't imagine that Lasso was doing a ton of jobs and sending people out during the pandemic because there wasn't the work to support it. So, I would actually be interested to compare this to last year's report, the 2020 report, and see where those numbers have changed from, because I don't see Lasso having sent a lot of people out on a lot of jobs while companies were still using their full-time staffers and not pulling in as many freelancers because they didn't have the work to go around. So it'd be interesting to compare those two. But I think in the interest of time, we should start looking at some other aspects, see what else is there. We just spent a lot of time kind of going on a little LED tangent.
I was gonna say there's a couple things, and I just wanted to mention, if we're okay with it, that Richard was commenting about LED walls. If you guys want to hear a little bit more about it.
Where was that, in the Zoom side?
On the Facebook side.
Gotcha. Oh, Ricardo. Yeah, I see. A bunch of LED conversation happening on Facebook versus projectors. I'll tell you, this year, I would say pre-pandemic, I was doing a lot more projection jobs, and then this year I'm doing a lot more LED jobs on the in-person side. So that says something. I actually can say I've only done one projection job this year to like 8 or 9 LED jobs in the last 2 months. So, Leo.
So the same thing. I mean, in the West End, they've been ripping out and replacing and redoing all the theatres, and they're taking out all the lighting and replacing it with LED. I know it's not the same thing, but and of course the big difference is once they do that, the downtime when they're doing refits and everything is going to be so much less, because they're not going to have to sit there and take out and redo all the bulbs when they're at half-life or anything. So it's going to, which of course for the theatres are going to say, well, right, we've now got more days when we're active, so we're not going to have we're not going to have the 2 days or 4 days out. But of course, again, it's a complete change in technology, a change in teams, a change in everything. Anybody who's sitting there was managing and repairing dimmer boards are going to be finding that they've got this, because all of that's going to go to one side. I don't believe you need all of that anymore for LED lighting.
Yeah,
I don't have it.
That's a great point. I mean, here on Broadway, everything is rented. So, I assume that a lot of stuff is going to go to LED on new shows. I don't know what they did. There were some shows that completely closed. I don't know if they refitted the shows, while the theaters were dark or not. I don't know if.
I've got a friend who runs Phantom, and they shut down Phantom, and my understanding is now it's reopened. It's now LED, and that show was never LED.
Right. Well, it makes sense. I mean, from a cost perspective, it makes sense, because your power draw is different. I mean, although it is a total different infrastructure now. You're not running your dimmers. You have to run on hot power, or just at least put hot cards in your dimmers so that they're hot all the time. But and running a lot more DMX than you previously were. But yeah, it's. I mean, that's going to be that's the way that everything's going to move. It's going to move to the cheaper technologies. And like I said, in live event, at least, cheaper, faster, better, better, I guess, is arguable, especially based on some of the conversation we're having on Facebook side to projection, for LED walls. I think it's that they're reliable. And keep in mind, during the pandemic, at least here in the States, the only a large sector that opened up was the outdoor movies, the outdoor performances, the outdoor, the drive-in type of things, the graduations. So now all of a sudden, with all these outdoor things, you're not, unless you're doing them at night, which you're not doing college and high school graduations at night, you needed to use outdoor LED walls to get the brightness because projection just doesn't compete with the sun. So, so there were a lot more uses for outdoor walls. To Omar's point earlier, indoor walls, well, you have a lot of hands that are moving indoor LED walls. They're definitely a little more fragile than the outdoor counterparts. But the outdoor ones, you say, oh, why don't I just bring an outdoor wall inside? The best outdoor wall you're going to get is going to be somewhere like a 3.6 mil, for how tight the pixel pitch is. And that doesn't fly on an indoor show most of the time. You don't usually have the distance from the audience to the LED wall to make that work. Definitely not on camera. So, and 3.6 is like the absolute smallest I think I've seen. David, I know you deal with a ton of LEDs, so you might have more ideas than I do, but
yeah, I mean, we're putting them in more and more in studio than outdoor, but I haven't seen the one that we have going in at the office light up yet. So I'll have to report back when we get that thing all going. But it's pretty big, I forget the pixel dimension. It's somewhere 20 foot tall, and there are 4 or 5 panels that they can slide and put together on the fly. Yeah,
pretty cool. But you're seeing the same thing though. Outdoor walls are definitely a bigger pixel pitch, but they're they're weather rated. I think Omar, you were talking about like the power. Now a lot of them now use the True One connections instead of
Correct.
just regular PowerCon because of the watertight rating, and things like that. So
it's easier. It's easier for the guys to just plug this, plug and turn, locks it in. You don't got to worry about power getting loose or anything, stupid. So it just makes it more convenient. Right, and they're usually colored, blue and black. So it's like this is the left side. This
right.
Is the right side.
The blue and the gray was the PowerCon, and those are still used on indoor walls. But now all your outdoor walls are using the Neutrik True One, which is usually a black and gold connector, and that's the watertight connector. And also, instead of having 2 of the same end, it has a male female end, and it lets you connect them if you need to add a jumper for length. So it's a different connector, and all those things that make it faster and easier to do cuts down the time that it takes to build it. And again, once you have people who know what they're doing, once they're trained, it becomes faster to get them put up.
But also, as as you say, it's Ethercon, PowerCon. These things are they're really easy to get hold of. They're just everywhere,
right.
Rather than you having custom bespoke things. So and you can rig up much faster because you've got it.
Right. If you got audio that's flying most of the time, you have extras you can use, or you have couplers in the audio department. I was working for a company a long time. They use L-Acoustics, and that's all they use for power. So it was always like, hey, I need a coupler, I need XYZ, and I just go to the audio department, and if I needed more, they had it, and I just make sure at the end of the show, unclip it and give it back to these guys.
Right. I mean, the other thing. Sorry, I just got distracted by a question there. But the nice thing too about outdoor walls is sometimes you can get them on, if you get them on touring frames, you can get stuff that are already pre-built. So as opposed to indoor, usually I'm taking them out of cases that have maybe 8 or 12 tiles in a case, and we're putting them one by one. Whereas when I get outdoor walls that are in touring frames, they come in a cage, we push them out. There's 4 of them already put together, attach them to the truss flying out, and move the cart, send them up. And there's a lot less time being built into them. So as we start to configure things like that, it's going to get cheaper and easier, and it's going to get faster for the techs. You'll need less techs,
Oh yeah,
so
Touring's got it on point. Touring, yeah, you take a rig on stage, put that to the truss, it flies up, go forward, attach the next, whatever, 8 by 4. Click a click, attach a couple wires, and then roll it up, and then the next roll is ready. I mean, that's super fast. I think when I did my last tour, it was like we got a whole 100 foot wide by something, whatever, 30 something. We got it up in like 2 hours. It was awesome.
Right. So Omar, while we're still, I know we kind of went started moving forward and then went back to LED. We got 2 questions. Do you want to grab those real quick?
So here's a couple ones that I'll jump in real fast, and I'll just I saw from Richard Hicks. Trying to scroll back up here. There's comments keep coming in. Trying to convince the redundancy. Okay, so the no redundancy with the LED walls, that scares me a lot. At least you have a hot backup on converter projectors. Yes to the projectors, and the answer to the LED is yes. If you run a dual, let's say the Nova Star, and the last port you run it in there, you can actually do it so that if the chain going from one going this way, essentially, right, like doing my path, and then it ends, and I start another chain up here that goes this way, right, at the data path, you can make a redundancy so that if the processor goes down for a reason, the redundancy picks it up. I'm trying to convince myself that I don't need the LED walls right now. I just bought a brand new 20K. It was actually outside the stadium for the street, but yeah, wet ground. Randy, the LED walls are great. The solution for installations, laser projectors will still remain valuable. So laser projectors are definitely still valuable. They definitely still hold their place. They provide a much better contrast, right? The brightness to contrast level. They look really, really good. They're also cost effective. Also, when it comes to lasers, they are much better at still producing the same light quality when you're saving space. So the biggest thing with LED walls is you can save a ton of space with it, right? We need space for the LEDs because of the lenses. If you do a mirror lens with lamps, you lose some lamp project. With laser, it's much less. So you can actually do a mirror lens and still get really good results with them. So they're definitely still viable. A lot of people, what they're doing is they're doing lasers on screens. There's a lot of stuff that I get called in. Lasers and LED walls, and they're almost very easy to adjust to make the laser projectors look similar to LED wall. You kind of got to change some of the colors in the LED wall, but they're very close to getting close together. So that's definitely still a plus, and it's still a big thing. Also, I think what's really been saving projectors is if you have a smaller room, you could do a double stacked rear projection blend, right, to fill up a room that's like a 34-foot room, and do like a wall-to-wall with projectors better than LEDs, which is still a little bit cheaper. You guys talking about an outside installation on sites. Radio Shack, yep, sad story. So to use the programming, honestly, Resum has been used, Bloom has been used, but mainly a lot of these guys are pushing Spiders, E2s, Aqualons, and Ascenders into there. David could probably test this better. LED walls are pretty much always doing 4K. There's just so many pixels you need to throw at it. Yeah, you could do a 10K content and scale it up or scale it down to fit your wall, but the actual pixel counts are super high when you're doing these big ass walls. So like 4K, 8K, those are kind of normal when it comes to LED walls. So Spiders, E2s, Resum, Aqualons, Maluma, all these programs definitely run into your processors very well. You just send them out, port out of SDI1 to whatever to go to Novastar on DVI1 and 4K resolution, and it'll take it all in. DVI, HDMI, or DisplayPort, DVI DisplayPort. I think that's all the questions that were really there.
Yeah, well, so sorry, Ricardo had also asked, as pertaining to LED wall, how low can outdoor walls go in pixel pitch? Needs to be breathable for obvious reasons. 3.9 mil, question mark?
0.8. You can go as low as 0.8 mil. 3.8, you still need...
For outdoor, he said outdoor.
It depends. You need it to be breathable to an extent. It's outdoors, right? So the when you're looking at pixel count, it's really distance,
I think he's talking
right?
about like blow through, which there are some screens are blow through for wind.
Got you. Okay. Yes.
And I haven't seen any outdoor walls much finer pitch than like a 3.6 out for an outdoor IP56 rated wall.
So I've seen
0.8. I'm going to see indoor. I haven't seen any of those outdoor. I don't know if you.
I want to say there's an Absent for 3.4 that's outdoor.
Okay, well, that's still you're talking the 3+ mil.
He's talking blow through. Yeah, he's talking blow through. So it depends. So down here in Florida, the Marlins Stadium has a 3.8 mil that's a solid back, but they're outdoors. But the LED itself is enclosed in a box so that someone can get in there and adjust things. Essentially, there's like a ladder system so you can go in there and adjust things manually. The panels on the outside are they're still about 7 or 8 inches off of the wall. Someone can essentially get in there and do stuff. You still need to have some kind of distance. Now, if it's outdoor without a backing, like a festival, like you guys were talking about, we talked about earlier. Leo brought up about the one outdoors. That one was probably an indoor rated one that they used outdoors because they had it and it was available and they got the price to work. They needed to move inventory. That one, what should have happened is that the truss structure itself should have been tied down, right? And then the LED wall itself should have been tied down from the bottom to stop the swaying. Not much you can do about some of those situations. Try to put something behind it that avoids wind coming through it or anything like that. But yeah, when you're doing outdoor stuff, it's tricky. Rain is always a factor, but it is what it is. You got to take risks sometimes, especially when you're hurting and you got to move inventory.
We also had another question from Ricardo on Facebook was, are we seeing that companies are training their former live techs, freelancers, and full-time to do virtual? That's been our process over the last 16 months. It's a slow process, but it works. So is anybody else seeing that the AV providers, the vendors, are doing training?
I'm seeing it a lot, and I'll add, outside of the virtual stuff that we do, I do work with labor companies down in South Florida, and we are training certain people within labor companies to do virtual positions. Yes.
Cool. So that takes care of the questions that I saw on Facebook. So do we want to move forward, or does anybody else on the panel have anything to add? Because we are getting close to time, and we kind of went on a few tangents, and we learned a lot about LED tonight. But let's maybe see if there's anything else we can chat about in regard to maybe these reports or any.
So I'll throw out there
in the industry.
I did find a report. I didn't find 2019. I apologize. I found a 2018 report from Lasso on pay rates. And I just, if you guys want to see that, scroll straight down to the audio engineer A1 positions of what they had for 2018.
That would be really interesting.
All right, so I'll share that right now. So these are A1 rates as of 2018. So 45 to 75 an hour. And these are so this was 2018, so 4 years ago, I guess, depending when they come out with this. But these were what they had here. They did not do this by region. At least I don't think they did. Yeah, so just positions and kind of rates generically. So I can zoom out a little bit, give you guys a better. There we go.
And the largest number, so of that kind of bell curve that they're showing, is that 22% were between that 55 and 64 an hour mark.
Yep, right here.
Yep. So that would be well, I mean, we'd have to actually add these up to look at what the average is, but definitely higher than what we were seeing, I think.
Yeah, way higher. Which is what's depressing about these numbers, right? It's like pre-COVID, this is what I'm used to seeing, is numbers like this. Post-COVID, it seems,
But I don't think we are seeing post-COVID. I think you're seeing during COVID figures.
Yeah, I think that exactly. I think that report is talking exactly. That's a great point, Leo. And I think you're 100% right on that. That the A2 number, it's very interesting how that's a higher number than the A1 numbers. And again, I think, as we talked about, and what I said before, I think that is more of a function of the sample pool for this report is coming from Lasso members and techs were being sent out by Lasso. And I just think that Lasso is getting less calls for A1s than they would for A2s, because most companies are going to be bringing in the A1s they know and trust rather than bringing in an unknown A1 from a labor company. The lesser positions, yeah, sure, that it will take the local labor, or we'll call in a labor company, or we'll use the in-house if we're in the hotel markets and things like that. But those lead positions and the operators are going to be their own hand-picked people. So I think that some of these numbers, we have to think about where the reports are coming from too. But it is telling that even the A2 numbers were an average below 45. I think it was 35 for this year was the A2 average, where in 2018 Lasso's A2 average was clear, or high number was definitely much higher pay rate. So
yep, so here's the A2 numbers for this year.
Right. Now, do they give us the range? No, they don't. No, they just give us the averages, the medians.
Yep.
So
Yeah, so they changed up their format a little bit. I felt the 2018, and I'll go to the top here. So the 2018 covers this, right? Oh, sorry, 2020, 2021. And the 2018 one covers a bunch more positions. Let me just get to the top here. It's covering all this.
right. Right.
And again,
breakout-
obviously,
right. There were no breakouts in 2020. You know,
Right.
there wasn't a breakout technician because we weren't in ballrooms and doing breakout sessions.
speaker ready room technician.
Right. And essentially, if you look at all these positions that they're talking about, most of them those of us who have pivoted to virtual, you know, how many of those positions are we doing as one person shows? You know, like Srikanth had a great talk about, you know, being the one man band virtual producer that he does, and you go through that list. He's every one of those. He ticks every box. So that's you know, something to keep in mind. And hopefully, going back to in person and hybrid, we're going to be having more of those positions again. We're going to need those roles filled with individuals as opposed to all of us taking a bigger weight on our shoulders. And as we do hybrid, we're still going to need that streaming person on site to handle the outbound for the virtual audience. So it's hopefully there's going to be tons coming back. And then I would say again, my one bit of advice, if anybody's listening, is don't make it a race to the bottom. Hold on to your worth.
And we've talked about that before. Don't devalue yourself at all. Because that's what's making the rates go down, is because when you go to say, you know, I'm a victim of it, but I'm also a victim of being a new video engineer as well as COVID rates. So I come in and it's like, I'm $350 a day right now, plus my rental and stuff. That's still a normal rate from what's going on around COVID. But like, you tell somebody $500, like, I can get somebody to do it for $300. And it's like, what do you say to that? You know, it's like, okay, well, all right, well, you can go ahead and get that guy for $300, but when he doesn't do it the right way, let me know. Because what you're seeing, and I think I know where David's going with this, what you're seeing is you're seeing those guys who did switch over and picked up vMix and figured out, and like we've talked about throughout this show, audio on vMix is not the easiest thing in the world. It's not. Even for somebody who's halfway decent with audio, I've seen a few audio guys even stumble through the audio on vMix because it's just the routing is different. And I think, and you just see people that just decided, oh, I can pick this up and I can go with it. I mean, I got a good dude, a great A1, Adrian, and he's called me 3 or 4 times. He's like, where do I find this in vMix? I'm like, here, go here, go here. He's like, I would have never found that, but now that I do, now he went in, figured it out, learned something, and sent me what he did. And he's like, hey, check this out. You can do this, this, and this. I'm like, didn't know that.
Yeah.
My contractor
exactly.
my contractor buddy has a saying that says quality doesn't cost, it pays. And that's 100% true.
Absolutely agree. So anyone else have anything to add while we're talking about labor rates? Because that's it looks like all we're going to get to cover today on the state of our industry. I guess it's for the guys who have been, the people who have been working again. Have you been seeing your rate staying kind of the same? You don't have to discuss what your rate is, but are you seeing that numbers are kind of on par with pre-pandemic? Are you leveraging any of your new skills to negotiate better rates? What's kind of been the way what you've been seeing? Maybe Justin, I know you're freelance. How is it affecting you coming back?
I don't think, I mean, for me, honestly, things have probably only been better, I would say. Only because I've been doing more operating roles and coming out of the crash. So obviously, whereas before, you know, we mentioned VTS earlier, a lot of my work came by way of them, was my highest labor. And a lot of that's just, you know, the show comes in, build it, not necessarily run the show. You just throw the show in the truck, you're done. Whereas now, during the COVID time, I've educated myself on a lot of stuff, and I'm getting a lot more show call stuff. So for me, it's better, but explaining that situation, that's why it's better for me.
So I'll jump in there. I've kind of been around all over the map with this one. I have clients that I had long relationships with, that I did deals for, for like a month or two of streaming work, and then I had clients who tried to get me as close to my rate as possible when I fought back on stuff. I will say what I think has made me. I have also been able to charge more, right, because of the skill sets I've learned and what I've been able to do during quarantine and the classes I've taken. I've actually offered more services to my clients, and that's how I've been able to get like, hey, here's like close to my rate, but we'll also add on XYZ because you're also going to do this or provide this piece of gear or get this up and running for us or do this as a part of it. And I've even done shows where I've made a lot more money than I usually make, and I've brought people with me like, hey, I'm making a ton of money. You're going to come on this show and be my like assistant, and you're going to run something for me. I mean, I brought Chris on shows where I was like, hey, come over to Miami right now. I have a crazy show. I need someone to run vMix while I do everything else. And I had the high enough rate because I was using my gear, my system. I was doing a bunch of pre-production work on it. I was charging for it. I was doing content for it. I was charging for it. I was doing the day of show and I was charging for it, producer rate. So it was a lot of stuff that I was doing. And I think for me, what's been the best pivot so far is designing the content for the programs that we do has got the word out there that I do this stuff. So I've been designing content on the pre-production side, and that's really what's been driving that rate to stay higher than what it was before, and kind of keep me in a good level to like say no to some more work, but also take on more work that I actually want to do. So like I've been able to shift things around that way by saying, this show doesn't really interest me, man, I'm not interested. And then saying yes to the work that I am interested in, and passing it on to people that I know, that's saying, hey, like I've contacted Justin for stuff, I've contacted Chris for a bunch of stuff, saying, hey, or Ed stuff, I have the show, I can't really do it. Do you want it? So yeah, for me, it's been more, I'd say, a pivot because of the new skill sets I've learned. Regardless of the TriCaster training, the Disguise training I did, I would say the biggest increase has been that virtual side and the pre-production when it comes to content creation. That's really what's been driving that rate up and like making it, okay, here's majority of your rate, what I could pay you, but I'm also paying you for this other stuff, which is triple what I would make normally anyway. So usually it's like, yeah, I'll do all that stuff and then you'll pay me this, all right, whatever, because I'm still making more money. So
yeah, I mean, I've been finding that virtual, I was actually able to raise my rate a bit, and then in person. So some of the companies I had already been working for and had relationships with, I maintained my pre-pandemic rates. And then most of the new companies that I maybe have forged relationships with have been at my more in line with my virtual rates that I'd been charging. So I don't know if that's the case with everybody. I don't know if I'm just overly ambitious and willing to maintain and up my rates as I see fit. But I've seen vMix operators. I know quite a few people who became vMix operators and were able to raise their rate for that in high demand skill that now is trickling down to the other roles that they're doing. So as opposed to where they gave a new vMix rate, that's now become their standard rate for doing other switchers. If they're just on a regular whatever it is, or doing projection, that's now their de facto rate. So I think there's room to grow our rates, and especially if you've been tuning into shows like AV Tech Talks or Office Hours, and you've been leveling up your skills over this time, you should definitely, and as long as you have really been working at it too, and have it to back it up. If you don't have the skills to back it up, or you've been only kind of observing and not implementing, maybe start getting some of that practice under your belt so that you can command a higher rate. But if you've leveled up your skills and you can back it up, like someone like Justin has, or Omar, or Chris, Chris coming from a totally different background and jumping into vMix, or like our friend Greg Gibson, who's been on the show a ton of times, who was a photographer, knew nothing about streaming or AV, and now is producing tons and tons of high level broadcast quality productions from his home mothership, and then now using AWS for his production. You know, these are things that if you're actually doing this work and you've leveled up those skills, there's no reason to not ask for the money that you're worth. You know, I know the market I'm in, and for some of the companies I work for that didn't move into this virtual space or are doing the same cookie cutter copy paste jobs that they used to do, they're not going to pay the higher rates, and there's enough techs that are hungry enough to take the money that they're offering, or you know, or even lowering their rates because they haven't worked a lot, and that's fine. I understand that, and that's one of the reasons why I haven't really raised my rate with too many of the companies I already had existing relationships with. But that's only going to last for so long. As the boom starts coming back, you know, again, assuming we don't see a huge spike with the any variants of COVID, and we don't go into any more severe lockdowns or anything like that. If we keep going in a forward trajectory of more in-person events and more hybrid coming back, I think that there's no reason why we shouldn't start seeing rates at least getting back to pre-pandemic levels or exceeding that, provided we all, again, don't race to the bottom. You know, I know it's tough when you haven't worked in a long time to hold steady on your rate, but the easiest thing is to not change. You know, if you had a rate before, you know, why lower it? Just, you know, especially if they don't ask you. And even if they do ask you, you say, that's kind of what my, you know, that's my rate. I can't really go backwards. And, you know, they're all going to ask you. Everyone's going to ask you, can you do it for less? That is the one given across any industry, is they're always going to try to get more for less. And all you have to do is say, oh, I'm sorry, this is my rate. And if you're worth it, and if you're the talent they want, then you're going to get what you need. Leo, I see your hand.
Yeah. The trick to getting the more for less, though, sometimes is to give more in the rate. So, and you've already talked about it, but you know, the skill sets that, you know, if you're picking up AWS, if you're picking up vMix, if you're picking up using A10 minis and being able to use them in, which are now going more and more, and being able to mix that together, and knowing enough of the audio to be able to deal with the stuff of how you get the stuff out of there. We're seeing our rates going up, but we are actually arguably delivering more per hour than we were doing before, you know, because it's a bigger rate. And that's the way to do it. So you maintain your rate by increasing what you're actually doing.
Yeah. I get people who ask me too, like, how was I able to raise my rate doing virtual from home? And, you know, I explain, right now I have 5 laptops sitting on my workstation. I have a giant 43-inch TV that's doing a quad split as second monitors for 4 out of those 5 laptops. I upgraded to gigabit internet. I've got my console here running audio. I've got other ancillary devices between my Facebook portals that sometimes bump people's meetings, and my iPad that's my Unity device. All of this stuff that, as a freelancer, I would be handed by the AV provider to operate on site, is now mine, and it's here. So of course I can, you know, I'm charging a rate because now we're using my equipment. You're in my home essentially, you know, and I'm pushing your product out for you and your client. So, you know, if you think of it in terms like that, like the what Leo just said, the added value. Right now, you didn't have to ship me 5 laptops. I have them. So that's an expense you're not incurring. You're not maintaining and updating the software on my 5 laptops. I'm taking care of that. I'm programming at home for my companion or whatever I'm doing with my Stream Deck. That's, you know, so those value adds. Yeah, look at all the things and think about in that way. Even little things, what are you doing as a value add? I bring my Stream Deck. That's a piece of equipment that makes the job run smoother, and I invested in that piece of equipment. So you can do it either as rental rates, or you can just do it in your rate and build all that in. I choose to do the building it in kind of to the rate. within reason. If there's something big and I know that the scope of the job is I'm in 4 separate Zoom meetings on 4 separate computers using 4 high definition accounts or something like that, well, then I'm going to say there's a rental fee involved in that. Or if we're using a Zoom account that's high def that I manage, then okay, you're going to pay for that because you don't have it, and I do. So there's things like that. Leo, and then Chris.
The one thing that we found has been absolutely brilliant, and as I mentioned it already, we use the ATEM Mini Extreme ISOs, and we turn around and record absolutely everything on it. It's actually, for our side, it's easy. It's one button push and you're recording everything. And then what we do is we include in the package a 10 terabyte hard disk. So we back everything up to the 10 terabyte hard disk, and on the way out the door, we hand them that. And we've included the cost of the hard disk at the price we buy the disk for. So we're not trying to make money, because I always feel that you don't screw people on those sort of things. We give them that and they go, "You mean I've got everything?" I said, "Yeah, you've got every single camera angle that we've shot and all the audio. Here it is, the lot." And they're like, but normally they're waiting weeks for that, or they need to do a post themselves for something else. And it just makes their life easier. And then they go, "That's exactly what I wanted." And it's easy for you because you just bought the ISO.
And Leo, what you just mentioned, I think is one of the biggest changes in virtual that the clients are becoming to expect now. And I think is great too, is that now we've kind of mastered not the post side, but getting that content to them, right? Before it used to take a long time. It used to be a process and you got to ship it out and transfer all the files. Now we've gotten, and the technology has become easier, that now you can just plug in a USB-C or USB 3.0 and just record directly to that hard drive. And as soon as you're done, right, it's like, hey, here's all your content. You're done, you walk away with it. I mean, I have a couple of studios that I built, and they're all running the, not the Pix 360s, they're running the Ajas, the Aja GoPros. And those are USB sticks, right? That comes with the ISO recordings, and the program all comes in a USB stick. It's like, oh, we did how many? 10? Yeah, here's your 10 drives. You're good to go. They're already labeled for you, P-touch on side, zoom 1, 2, 3. Here's all your ISO records, here's your program record. It's all on there. Do whatever you want with it. As soon as we're done with the show, they'll get to walk away with that. And that's something I think, because of virtual, the AV industry has kind of mastered, me like, hey, this is actually easier if we do it this way, because now the client's not waiting for anything. We're not waiting for transfer to do all that stuff. Now we just give it to them. Now the only wait that I ever see is, oh, can you drop it to our Dropbox? Oh, no, not a problem. That'll take an hour or two for me to transfer all these H.264 files to your Dropbox. No big deal. And that's still, they have someone in another remote location getting those files instantly as you're transferring them, saying, hey, I got this, I got that, and they start going. So I think that's a huge advantage that we've done because of virtual, that people are just, it's becoming more and more the norm. And it was a push, a constant prior to this, and now it's become more the norm. It's like, if you're not doing that as a company or a freelancer or tech, it's just, you're not where people want to be at. And to add to what Ed was saying, one of the things I think that's kind of the underlying motivation to some of these companies, because the companies, and I'm sure people in the chats here, I know like Chuck's one of the people. I know Ricardo Hicks is one of the guys. A lot of the AV companies, not the event planners, but the AV companies are really the ones fighting for your guys' rates right now. And it's just easier to hire you out, or to hire an Ed or Chris or Leo or David or Justin or anybody who's here, to say, hey, I'm just going to hire you. I need to do X, Y, Z. Yeah, the machine is great. Just add that to your bill. It's just easier for me on the back end, because I don't have to worry about returns. I don't have to worry about ins. I don't have to worry about the same thing as was saying, updates, the programming, the software. Is it going to connect together? Are they going to mix and match? Are they going to plug in right? Like all these things you usually have to think about when you're renting. And you got all that? Cool. I'm going to put you down for this stuff. Bill me for this stuff. Got it. And it's just simpler on the back end. It's easier for you. And the clients don't have to worry about anything. They just worry about paying you. And that's one of the things I think that's really kind of changed in the way we do things, and why working from home is such a big thing. And to one of the comments I saw here from a gentleman in Australia, I got to scroll back here to the bottom, Amar, honestly, man, the biggest thing you could do, and anybody can jump in on this, networking right now. If you've done the AWS and Elemental Media Live and Media Package, the guys who need to know that, you need to network with those people and let them know that you can do those things. Make little demo videos of it, put your name out there, really just network, because those are skills that are in demand. But if we don't know who you are and how to contact you, then good thing you know them, but it doesn't help me out, right? So just networking, doing these events, doing, these talks with us, doing the talks with, oh man, what are the other programs?
Office hours.
Office hours. Thank you. Doing it with office hours, doing it with Audio Opinion, all these different networking kind of social hour events are definitely a way to get your name out there so people know what you can do.
And on that point, as Ed probably knows, office hours is going 24 hours now. So it's going to be after hours outside of the main program. So there's literally, if you need, there's a open chat, but I've said we should pause during this. But it's a great way, as you say, because there's people all around the world on that you can talk to that need, as you said, that I think more and more people are going to bring in, when they want an A1, they're going to bring in, as they did with Ed was talking about it earlier, they're going to bring in people they know, even if that person isn't in their local facility, because you get to know and trust people you want to work with, and the barrier, the cost of travel when needed isn't as big, but also a lot of what we have to do isn't actually part of the travel. It's the setup, the configuration is all being done remotely now. Everything is like planned and everything remotely, and you can do that from anywhere.
And I'll add. So Leo, that job I talked about earlier, that I'm going to be gone out of state for 10 days doing this job, that actually was a direct result of relationships I forged through communities like AV Educate. We have a Discord. It happened to be actually office hours, as well as part of that beta team for Remotely Possible. So that connection I had with someone that I made during the pandemic, a person who I haven't met in person, I was able to network and get some work. So definitely, join these communities and be active. And when someone says, "Oh yeah, I need a good vMix op. I know Justin Butler is great with vMix. Let me give him a ring." It pays off to be part of these communities and be active. I do want to go back to Omar. You talked about the Amar's question. He also had another one about what's the demand for people who have these skills in AWS Elemental, Media Live, and Media Package. And I can say, I just want to touch on that because I think what is going to be very valuable moving forward, if you have those skills with AWS, is going to be in the the hybrid space, especially here in the States. One of the things that I think is going to be very important, I don't know how it works everywhere else in the world, but venue internet is typically very expensive to get. There's been a few conversations going on about how much people are paying for, hotel internet when you're going back to corporate event, and it's not cheap and it's not always reliable. So if you have AWS, one of the things you can definitely do is set up your infrastructure so that that's where your production's really happening, and then have a local on-site, vMix or something that just you beam it to your cloud production. Maybe it's the live cameras, and you do everything else in the cloud, because you don't need a huge internet connection to get to your cloud instances, and then your cloud instances are super reliable. AWS has, you're not going to get a better internet connection than AWS can provide you. So I think in those hybrid workflows, having those skills is going to be very useful. You'll still be on site, I think, because you need to ingest the live cameras. There is live content you're going to need to ingest, and you are going to have to spit out virtual content coming from remote presenters or, remote audience, virtual audience. But I think that the cloud for hybrid is going to be a very popular solution, a much more reliable solution, and a more cost-effective solution than trying to buy or rent the bandwidth that you need at the venues. As long as you can get the small amounts of bandwidth that you need to and from your cloud instances, you have less to worry about. You could even be on a mobile device, for example, with TeamViewer, and not lose your production because it's in the cloud. So So to that point, I think that's something worth talking about. And if there's one thing you want to start studying this weekend, that you're not already on that AWS train, that's, I think, a good place to start, playing with. Leo, go ahead.
Yeah, so end of last week, I did a 24-hour event for WordFest, which is the WordPress industry. It was all running on AWS vMix. We were going out via StreamYard, but it doesn't matter. I got a load of people from the office hours. I put a post on office hours. I ended up with a load of people who ended up helping out. I had a great session. I mean, okay, this is for WordFest. The whole of the WordPress industry works on volunteering, but people have got jobs from it already through it. And it was just, we were learning and we were doing a load of stuff on vMix on the cloud. And it was really great opportunity. And there's loads of those coming up to get involved in.
Absolutely. So we are getting close to the top of the hour, which means we should be wrapping it up soon. Omar, any last thoughts or any last thoughts from anybody here on the panel?
Yeah, I just want to say one of the biggest things, I think, as far as the technical or the freelancers and the technicians that are watching the show and that kind of join us every night, right? For the ones that are watching tonight who haven't really gotten there yet, I think part of this is that, and Chris and me talk about this all the time, the one thing that I after 10 years, I guess, 10 plus years, because I've been doing it since I was a kid, but I relearned, I guess, or found the enjoyment again of the practice and the learning of the new technologies. I felt like right before this happened, I was in a director position. I got kind of like, I know the gear, I'm competent enough, I can make a show happen. And then when COVID happened, everything went down, and like I started training again. And like the enjoyment of teaching and learning this stuff, and like really getting hands-on and getting recertified with the TriCaster and learning the vMix through the YouTube stuff, and then through the hands-on training and just pushing myself constantly at home. Like, I forgot how much I missed that stuff. And I think a lot of people just, the guys that are doing well, the ones who do that and love doing that, and they have enjoyment in that. And they're the ones that like, they mess up something minute and they go home and they figure it out for hours, like all of us have done. And I think that's what got lost. And the guys that are staying busy are doing that. So like, just learn to enjoy what we're doing again and have fun learning these programs, because they're all slightly different, right? Like there's always that read the manual, which is totally true. Master one piece of gear, and they're all kind of be the same. vMix, I think, is an amazing program. It does a lot of cool things. I kind of love this thought that the creator was like, I don't give a crap what your machine is. If you want to buy this, you're gonna be able to buy it. But if your machine can't handle it, that's on you. So like, you have to learn about the machine stuff. And then we were able to push what vMix does to this whole other level, right? As an industry, I think we definitely pushed what this program could do. And I think we've all mastered it in different ways, and seeing how it's been done and kind of going home and troubleshooting different issues we've had and just kind of figuring things out. There's an enjoyment in that I think a lot of people have either learned to enjoy or they figured out. And I think for anybody who's watching tonight and really kind of dive back into that child mentality of, this is something new and shiny, let me play with it and figure it out, I think that's what really drives people to excel and do better and constantly get improvements on, and not just get stagnant and boring with it. And for the guys that left that want to come back in, I mean, honestly, YouTube is a great resource. I'm not a huge fan of it. Read the manual, go to YouTube. YouTube will show you that one piece of thing, but the manual will teach you everything. But use that as a reference guide and back and forth. Just learn to love to kind of play with things and troubleshoot and problem solve. And that's all it really takes. That's all I had, man. Just sorry, I want to give like a, I know I'm rambling here. I just come back to the joy of learning and troubleshooting. It's really what I think most of us did to really excel during this downtime, right? We had the time to kind of go back to our original love when we started the industry, was getting to learn all these things and then figuring them out and getting better at it and troubleshooting things. And the ones that made it to the top that are still there and are still getting up is because we love that stuff and we love doing it. And I think if you're out there watching, and that's the one thing you got to take out of this, is be passionate about the industry you're in and learn and love what you do. That's all I got. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, I've actually, finding AV Educate and being on AV Tech Talks has been great, because I love being able to share knowledge, make the connections, building this community. The amount that I've learned from our guests and our panelists has been, I never would have gotten this amount of concentrated knowledge and learning done on my own in my own time, especially when pre-pandemic, when we were busy. Most of us, a lot of us, I would say, learned things on the site. We were learning while we were earning, and we would hope that maybe somebody would show us a cool trick, or we'd be like, wait, what did he just do? What was that? And try to remember and then recreate, especially when we didn't have the gear. If we're freelancers, we don't own the gear. Maybe you go in for a shop day when it's slow, but when was it ever slow? Pre-pandemic. So this has been a great experience. I've learned a ton. I love being able to share knowledge with people. So I love it when I get those, direct messages on our Discord or comments, thanking us for something that we've done or even specific advice. I'm all over a lot of forums too. And that feels great to know that something I've been able to put out, for the world has been able to be some value taken out of and somebody else learned while I'm also learning from everybody in the community. So those are all, just to echo what Omar was saying. And, it feels great to be able to do that. And I think that some of that karma comes around and you put good things out, so you get good things back. And so hopefully everybody here who has participated in the show, our panelists here, Omar, we got Chris, we got Justin tonight, David and Leo, and the dozens and dozens of panelists we've had over the course of the show. Thank you guys for putting all this knowledge out there and sharing it so freely with the community, because I think we're really, it may seem like, oh, we're just getting together on a Monday night to talk shop, but I think in some cases we really are helping people. And I know that I'm getting a whole lot out of it as well. It's not a one-way street. I'm definitely, I learned so much from everybody here all the time. So really, really happy that this could be a thing. We've been doing it for just over a year, so that's pretty awesome too. And so thanks everybody who's here on the panel tonight. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank DVE Store for their continued support. The game got very leveled up for us once DVE Store stepped in and helped us provide all of our broadcast platforms with the 1080p that we're sending out. So no matter if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, or you're here in the Zoom webinar, which I know sometimes that's the trickier place to get the high resolution, no matter where you see it, we're sending 1080p, which, for the demos makes it a lot better to see everything. I know at Justin, sadly, we didn't have the 1080p when Justin Butler did his Companion Pi build, and looking at that code in Zoom and how we were sending it out was very difficult. So now since the DVA Store stepped up and has supported us and helped us get that out, it's helpful for getting the message out and for improving the learning that we can share with everybody. So we thank them for that. You can visit them at dvestore.com. Guy and his team are great. And if you go over there, pick something up, let them know, yeah, heard about you guys from AV Tech Talks. Thanks for helping them get that higher resolution, because it just helps everybody to be able to, learn better. Yeah, that's great English. It helps everybody to get a better experience, I should say, by being able to see everything a lot more clearly. So, sadly, that means that you also get to see me in high def, and I apologize for that, though. So, with that, though, I wanna say goodnight, unless anybody has anything to add. Chris, I don't want to not let you talk about your stream if you have something to say.
Absolutely. So I did see the question in there, and I will briefly answer that real quick, Chuck. When I first got introduced to vMix, I literally ran my entire stream with vMix for about 35 days just to learn the ins and outs of vMix and how it operates. So yes, has it upped the level of my streaming game? Yes, because I've noticed things before that are like, nope, that doesn't look good, or that doesn't appeal to a prettier eye. So yes, being here and learning everything that I've learned here has definitely helped in my streaming game. With that, I stream every single day from 8 to 2 when I'm not on a show, and I do charity streams for Extra Life. Donations go to the local charity, or local hospital, Children's Hospital in my area, which happens to be Golisano Children's Hospital. And I still don't take any donations for my stream. Everything donated to me through my PayPal goes to buying Nintendo Switches for the kids. So anytime you guys stop by, I've had a lot of you guys stop by and be like, hey, you've taught me so much with OBS, or you've taught me so much with this, or you guys are great with what you do. I actually enjoy that, and I acknowledge you on stream about it too, and where you came from. So don't feel that you come to my stream and if you were to say something, I'd be like, oh, hey, yeah, you're just from here. No, I acknowledge what we do here, and like Ed and Omar have emulated before, I enjoy what we do here. I enjoy what I do here. I enjoy coming in here in the beginning and showing you guys OBS and the stream rates and things that people weren't really looking at prior to COVID and things like that. And I've learned a lot, obviously. I mean, I've turned myself into a pool technician now to a video engineer. And I enjoy it. That whole sentiment, when you enjoy what you do, it's not work, is not a lie. Because I go and I do shows and I absolutely have the time of my life and enjoy everything. But with that, I'll end it there.
Great. Well, thanks, Chris. With that, I want to have everybody say good evening to our Facebook and YouTube audiences, and we'll be back next Monday. We're here every Monday at 7 to 9 p.m. AV Tech Talks, presented by AV Educate. Go like and follow AV Educate on Facebook, on YouTube. We have a channel. Follow us everywhere you can. It really helps us out. Subscribe, and you'll get all the information about when we're going live and things like that. If you sign up for the notifications. So we hope to see you back next week. If you want to join us on the, the Zoom webinar registration link has changed. So I'll make sure I drop that in the chat. It might take me a second to find it, but we will get it up there. And I don't know if Omar or Chris, if either of you have the Discord link, you can drop real quick. Join our community on Discord. We're all on there. We all chat all the time, and that's how you can get some, to chat between episodes. And, we'll be more on top of it. I've been a little busy lately and haven't stayed on top of getting everything updated as often as I should. So I'm going to start working on making sure that we keep everything up to date and get you guys the information that you need. So join us there. Keep the conversations going. I'll drop that in this chat right here. Join our Discord, and we will see you guys next Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Tell your friends. See you later.